Yeah, today we'll be discussing about how we could build a marketplace app within Sitecore using the new Marketplace SDK that Sitecore has released, following the Agentic AI principles. If you wanted to build certain agents and if you wanted to deploy an AI app within the Sitecore Marketplace, how we could build is what we'll be looking at it today. And I'm Subbu. I lead the AI practice here at Altido and been with Altido for about 6 years, worked with different companies in the past, primarily around the manufacturing, retail, professional services sectors. I work from Halifax in Canada and 4-time Sitecore MVP. And I write blogs and I create modules. I've created some of the modules like Teams app, Chrome's extension, and GitHub. If you get a chance, please do try that and let me know your feedback. Today we'll be starting with what is Marketplace SDK, what we could do with the new version. So this is a little different from the previous marketplace that we used to have with Sitecore XPs. And we'll dive into what is Agentic AI and the Agentic AI patterns that you could follow, the solution approaches, and how you could combine both the Marketplace SDK and an Agentic AI to build an Agentic AI Marketplace app. And then we'll look at a demo as well and a live walkthrough of the code that I've created and some of the, like we can look at the Q&A after that. So quick summary of the marketplace apps. The purpose is primarily, so when you work with XP, right, you have the flexibility of customizing anything and everything that you see in Sitecore. So you have pipelines, events, and you can even customize how Sitecore behaves as well. But that flexibility gone away when you move to XM Cloud, because XM Cloud is a very closed SaaS product. That's why Sitecore came up with this option of marketplace, where if you wanted to change any of the, you cannot completely customize like how you used to do in XP, but then whatever is meaningful, like if you wanted to update a specific item on like if you want to, when you save an item, or like when you wanted to like review any content within an item, or there may be like multiple other scenarios, like if you wanted to check the performance of an item, accessibility, for all of these different elements, like which you would want to like do within a specific page, you could create a marketplace app for it. And there are two specific architectural styles that Sitecore has given us. One is the client-side app and the full stack. When I say client-side, it's basically when you deploy this marketplace app, it is a Next.js application, which runs only within your client side, and it can communicate with inbuilt authorization within your XM Cloud. So if you wanted to deploy a specific app, like which makes modifications to any of your existing content in the same, which, for example, in a page editor context, then you could deploy a client-side app. Like this, in this case, the browser acts as a proxy because this client-side app, like when you deploy an app, like it gets deployed within an iframe, which means you will not get access or any of the details of the outside elements, like of the parent, like that you see. Right. So in this case, like when you deploy this as a client-side app, like you cannot access what's happening within XM Cloud. So that's why Sitecore has created a specific starter kit. I've used that starter kit. I'll show that to you. So with that starter kit, like in that starter kit, you have the inbuilt authorization through which you can communicate with the XM Cloud APIs and edit an item, update an item, and you can do whatever modifications you wanted to do. Yeah. And then the next option is the full stack. So this option is very beneficial if you have like long running processes behind the scenes. So this comes with like a client-side application and also a server-side application. So this is helpful like in scenarios like where you have, like even in case of Agentic AI, like if you wanted to have a long-running process, like which should still run even if the user moves from one page to another page. In those cases, you will be using a full stack application where it can run without any context. When you use a client-side app, like it will be when you move from one page to another page, like this context will end because it's primarily because it's using browser as a proxy, so we'll lose all of the context. But then the full stack will solve that problem. And there are two authorization options that are available. One is the built-in authorization option, which comes with the starter kit. When you use it, like Sitecore uses that authorization mechanism to communicate between the XM Cloud, those page items that you see, and also between the app. But you can also do a custom authorization. This is helpful when you have long-running process, like from which, like if you have to make a call to the Sitecore API, you would want a custom authorization there because you will not be able to use the built-in authorization if you lose the context when a user is switched from like one item to another. And there are multiple extension points available. The first one is the standalone. If you wanted to have something which is within the cloud portal, but not within the context of XM Cloud, you could create a standalone app. But if you wanted to have something within XM Cloud, you will create an XM Cloud app. And there are 4 different options. The first one is the full screen. If you wanted to have anything, for example, if you're building a content migration tool, where you don't want to have any of the details of the page that the user is in or something like that. If you want it to operate standalone, but then within the context of XM Cloud, then you would create a full screen app. And the page builder context panel is something which if you want to, this is what we'll be seeing in today's demo as well, where if you wanted to do anything in the context of the page builder, you could probably use this one. And if you wanted to have a custom field like a color picker or something, then you will choose a custom field. And dashboard widget is something which will go in your XM Cloud homepage, where you wanted to show anything when the user logs in itself. It could be something which connects with the CDP XM Cloud or something around this. If you're building any apps around that, you could use a dashboard widget option. So we discussed about what is Marketplace SDK, what you could do with that. Now moving on to the Agentic AI. So I'll start with a little bit of history. So in 2022, we had this generative AI from ChatGPT, which was released, which could generate human-like text and images. But then when you ask any question, it was able to answer perfectly, but then it was lacking the context of your specific company or the knowledge that you have. And that's where we had all of these co-pilots coming into picture in 2023 and 2024, which is primarily following the retrieval augmented generation approach or the RAG approach and the function calling. With these specific architectures, we were able to solve the problem of introducing our context to the GPT models and benefiting from that. But then these, even though we were able to do all of these, it was still staying as an assistant. It was not helping us to automate some of the process that we would have, because all of these models are generative. They are good at predicting the next best word, which means they are good in the generation itself, but then they are not good at reasoning. They are not able to answer complex questions that you may ask and come up with a plan. So these are some of the things which we were finding as issues with those GPT models. And that's where in 2024 and 2025, we had got a lot of newer models which have the reasoning capability, like O3 Mini, O4 Mini. All of these models, these are really good at reasoning. If you give a complex problem, it was able to break that down into smaller problems in a more accurate way. So these are even though these are text models, they were getting those intelligence inbuilt within those models itself, with which we was able to break down the plans. This was a newer kind of model altogether, different from the generative models. And these models, with these reasoning model and the generative model, and along with that, we had a newer version of model called actioning models, which can do any of the actions. If you give a natural language prompt, it was able to convert those prompts into browser actions or computer actions and automate tasks like a robotic process automation. So with these 3 different models, reasoning, generative, and actioning, with all these 3 together, we can now automate any of the business process that you may have. And that's what is the background of Agentic AI, where you could automate any process that you would do today. But then one thing to keep in mind is you might not get the ROI if you automate all of the process. So you may need to find out the repetitive process and the labor intensive process. It's something which you may do 5 times a day or 10 times a day. And if it's labor intensive, if it's taking a longer time, a deeper data analysis or those ones. So those are the kind of tasks which you could probably build an agentic system around to automate to get the value out of it. And if you are automating a process which you are doing only once a week or something, then you may not find the ROI. So we spoke about Agentic AI, but if you have to break this down and one step further, if you take any of the process that you may do today or any of the tasks that you may do today, let's take an example of responding to an email which you got from your boss. So what you may do is looking at the email, first you gather any of the details that you may need to respond to that email. And then you may analyze what is there in the email and come up with a plan to respond. And you may decide if you have to go with this approach or that approach. And then you may probably create an email and then send it back to your boss, right? So if you take, this is a simple task, but if you take any problems, even a bigger processes that you may have in your organization, for all of these process, this kind of pattern almost remains the same. So where you gather the details, you analyze, you plan, you decide, and you execute. So this is what is agentic AI, right? Like, so if you could probably like take for planning and analysis, you could take reasoning models, and for decisions, you could take a reasoning models, and for execution, you could take in certain cases it may be a generative model to summarize the response, or in certain cases it may be actioning model as well. So these three models that these three kind of models that we were discussing in our previous slide. So those all come into action here in this slide. You can see like, so for each of these tasks, you would find, you take a bigger business process and you break that down into smaller goals. And for each of the goals, you'll create an agent. And for each of the agent, you'll find the appropriate model. It could be a reasoning, actioning, or generative model. And you engineer that with those specific tasks. So this is what is, in a nutshell, like what is agentic AI. Okay. So agentic AI means it's basically a combination of multiple AI agents that we built, right? So if you break that down further, and if you look at each of these individual AI agent, it has these elements. The first one is the foundational AI model, which is the large language model, and the instructions that you give, what are the directions like you want the agents to be ingested with to make those decisions or make those actions. And then the knowledge base, like it could be the SharePoint or internal knowledge bases, like whatever you have, or external data from the web as well. But here's where like we have to be very careful about giving the knowledge to the AI. So it needs to be at the right level of context and right level of data. It shouldn't be too high or too less. And that's where a lot of engineering comes into picture in limiting the data or making the data available to AI so that it can make right decisions. Like sometimes if you give any wrong set of data, then AI could hallucinate. And this is where the hallucination problem happens. So a lot of engineering, a lot of effort would go into building that knowledge layer. And then the next one is the actioning layer, which is like not very complex, like where if you wanted to update any CRM records or like trigger any marketing campaigns, like these generations and actionings will fall within this specific layer. And moving on to the patterns, these are the common set of patterns, which in most of the cases we'll be using. The first one is the basic responder pattern. This is a simpler form, like when you ask a question to the agent, when you provide an input, it comes back with an output. The next one is the retrieval augmented generation pattern, where you supply with your specific context. When you couple the models with some vector databases, vector stores, or the AI search, so it could like with which you could probably filter out the data, the large data that you have. Look using the keywords, you will filter out a small amount of data using the AI search, and then ingest that data as a context to the AI and get the response. And the next one is the memory augmented agent pattern, where these agents uses an external memory system, like it could be like a vector database or something like that. But it also remembers the past interactions about the user as well, and the context to provide a more personalized response for the user. And the other one is the tool use pattern, which is also a common pattern, like where you wanted to build a multiple set of agents, and if you wanted to connect with an MCP or with a tool to get a specific response from your external systems that you have, like services, APIs, or databases. The next one is a planning, where here's where the reasoning models come into picture, where an agent breaks that down into smaller tasks and and executes the plan. And the next one is the reflection pattern, where when you could probably have a critic agent. So once the agentic system that you have generates the response, you could introduce an agent to validate the response that it was generated. Like for example, usually like in a lot of cases, you may be able to use a reverse logic to validate. If you take an example of addition, like if you have like 1 + 2 = 3, and if you wanted to find out if that addition is right, you may subtract like 1 from 3 to find out what is the answer if it's 2, right? So it's kind of like using a reverse mathematical logic. Similar to that, you will use a different logic to find out if the generated response or a generated fact or a generated set of response from the database, is it correct or not? So this is the reflection pattern which you may be commonly using once you start building these applications, because we wanted to validate the response in a different way before we supply to the front end to make sure it's not hallucinated. And then last one is the react pattern, where the agents, it's kind of like, it's also called like chain of thought. And also we combine both reasoning and the actioning capability of the model to respond together. Okay. And moving on to the multi-agent pattern, the previous slide we were discussing about a single agent system, but then in most of the cases, you may want to go with a multi-agent pattern, because when you deal with these tasks or business processes, you want to break that down into multiple goals. There will be multiple goals. And only when you give one goal per agent, these agents perform really well. In most of the cases, like we have given multiple agents and we haven't seen it to perform really well. So we recommend giving multiple one specific goal to an agent to make sure it really performs well. And in that way, you can also do a proper unit testing and make sure each agent does a task well and without any hallucination. And then the entire systems perform really well. And in case, for example, if you're not doing a proper unit testing, what can happen is one agent could be 90% accurate. And if there are like 5 agents at the end, the total response generated will only be 50% accurate. So that is one of the common problems we see. And so unit testing each of these agents would be helpful in this specific case. And the patterns that we see here is the supervisor pattern. This is what we have used in our example. I'll show it to you in the demo, where we have one specific supervisor managing multiple different agents and making sure all of these agents run in parallel. And the supervisor agent can consolidate the response and send it back to the front end. And the next one that we have seen is the hierarchical pattern, where you have like multiple layers of these supervisor and worker agents grouped together. And the competitive pattern is something like for critical use cases, you may want these different set of agents to work in a different way, and then find out which agent has responded really well. And you can pick up those specific response and send it back to the user. And then network pattern or the horizontal agent is something which we have also seen in common, where one agent completes a specific task and it goes on to the next agent. And handoff pattern is similar to the A2A protocol, like where you have like multiple systems. For example, if you work with like for example, Databricks has its own agentic system, and you can build a multi-agent system within the Databricks, which works on top of the data that you have in Databricks. And if you have also Agentforce and Salesforce, when you wanted to like hand off something to the CRM system, you could probably do an A2A protocol between the Databricks agent and the Salesforce agent and hand that off to the next layer. So this is a common pattern. And also the hybrid pattern that we see here is the agentic RAG. This is something which is helpful, like when you have multiple layers of document and you really need a planning to be combined along with the RAG system. So that's what like we call it as agentic RAG. This is something which we use often for use cases like getting insights from the data that you have, or those ones making decisions, or customer support call center, those kind of use cases. If you wanted to get insights or get information, that's where like this specific pattern will be very helpful compared. This functions much better over the RAG approach, which we used to follow a couple of years ago. Okay. And so we looked at all of the patterns and approaches, but then how we could build these apps. So you have 3 major options when it comes to Sitecore. The first one is leaning towards an AI platform. One example is Gradial. Sitecore has a strategic partnership with Gradial. You could build these individual agents and build a multi-agent system like based on the process, and you could automate that. And there are multiple other tools in the industry like Writer, Glean, like all of these are like really good platforms. Like you could probably pick one and build on top of it. And those agentic system can also be wired up with the marketplace app that you create. And the next one is the Sitecore Agentic Studio. Sitecore has announced this Agentic Studio in Symposium, but this they haven't announced specifically if that is an API way, but of course, like there will be an API way. Like they have introduced a system where like you could build flows, you could build multiple agents and put them together in a flow to automate those. But that should also be having an API, but that's not really called out in the documentation. But once it has an API, you could also inject that into your marketplace app and kind of use it. And the last one is building your own. Like this is what we'll be seeing in today's demo. I've used Microsoft Agent Framework, which is the newer agent framework. Previously, it was Semantic Kernel was the framework created by Microsoft, but then they released this new framework, I think about 3-4 weeks ago. And there are other frameworks available like LangChain and all, but when you work with Microsoft stack, like it is much beneficial for us to go with these Microsoft Agent Framework. Okay. So when it comes to building app, like these are the high level steps which we generally follow. The first one is you have to design the agent flow, these tools and memories, like understanding the business process, the goals, breaking that down into multiple agents, defining like how the flow should look like, how the user experience should look like, how the human in the loop should look like, what are the things which you wanted a human to approve, like certain times, like for example, if the confidence level of the generated response from the AI is less than 80%, then we would generate a human in the loop scenario. And if it's more than like 90%, we don't need it. So that's a kind of structure that we follow. But then you can come up with your own formulas to find out like when you should do the human in the loop and how the experience would look like. Do you want to build a portal for it, or do you want to build a this marketplace app is one way of human in the loop, like where the human can review and then they can apply the fixes as well. There are like multiple different ways. It could be our email or Slack or Teams. So you can define all of those things and then build the marketplace app. Make sure you handle the authentication. There are a couple of ways we discussed earlier. Find out what is the right way. And then identify the right platform and the framework for the agentic app. So sometimes like it would be beneficial for you to go with an orchestration platform, and certain times like it may be good for you to like build a custom app itself. So you can probably find out like what is the best way, depending on your whole holistic picture of your organization, where you wanted to go, like what are the use cases that you have. If you have more, it may be beneficial for you to look at and evaluate which platform supports those use cases, has those integrations and multiple things. And then build the agentic app, which is in a compatible language. Like one thing which to notice, like these agent frameworks that we are discussing about, they support Python. Most of the cases it's Python because that's the language which machine learning people were using a long ago. So Python is the language which supports most of these is supported language in these agent frameworks, and C# is also supported, but not really TypeScript or anything else like which you would use in your headless world. And then make sure you ensure like security, performance, and make sure to capture those instrumentation as well. And one thing around performance, like whenever you make a call to the AI, it takes about 2 seconds. Like, so if you wanted to do anything real time, it is something it's a little hard with AI today because the AI call itself takes a couple of seconds. So for backend operations, like something for a marketplace app, it is good, but not really for the real time. Like you may need to like come up with a different approach or a pre-processing or those kind of approaches we have. And from the security standpoint, from marketplace app perspective, you're good. But then if you're exposing something like to the front end, you need to make sure to do a testing from the prompt injection perspective, or there are multiple different scenarios through which like people could probably get more details than what they are supposed to get. So you could restrict all of those with our security measures. And then the final step is hosting the marketplace and agentic app. Yeah, this is a sample architecture of what we will be looking at today. So here you could see so I have a use case of agentic compliance insights. Like this is a common problem across multiple industries. For example, if you take professional services, like when they create a content, they wanted to make sure, for example, they don't want a client name to be mentioned in a specific content. They have a lot of checklists and those things for each and every content, right? They have to be compliant with not only with GDPR and other compliance regulations, but then their legal team has their own set of compliances, which they usually carry in an Excel sheet, and somebody has to manually validate. And somebody is well versed in it, like they may do it in less than like 10 minutes or 15 minutes. But then if somebody is new to the organization, they may take like 2-3 hours to validate the content looking at the Excel sheet. And it also depends on, sometimes like that could be a possibility of human error as well, which we wanted to eliminate. So that's where we are looking to solve with this specific app. And here I have created a marketplace app, like which interacts with the Sitecore AI. And also we have a backend system. Like this is an agentic architecture, which is deployed. Like right now I'm hosting all of these in localhost. I have two apps, a Marketplace app, and that interacts with an Agentic app. And it includes multiple agents, which is a supervisor agent, and then a multiple validator agent, like which works with these checklists and other things. And an optimizer agent prepares a final recommended content based on whatever validators identified. The optimizer finds the recommended content, and it will be pushed back to XMCloud. Okay. Yeah, we could look at a quick demo, and then we could pause for any questions after that. So this is the UI that you would get from your Sitecore Cloud. Here is the App Studio, and you will generally click on Create App. And here I've selected the app that I've created. So here you could, I've enabled the page context panel that you can see here. And I've not gone with the custom authorization yet because this is not a long running process. Like this would complete within less than a minute. And I've enabled access for the Sitecore AI APIs. And this is the deployment URL. This is my local, and I've specified the logo for it. And this specific app that I've created, it's available in the GitHub as well. So it includes two apps, Agentic App and the Marketplace app. I can probably show you the code as well here. So here, if I expand the Agentic App, here you could look at a list of agents. So I've included a base class, and all of these agents inherit from the base class. And you see the bias agent, like it validates for the bias checklist, and an agent that validates if the citations are accurate, and an agent which validates if the facts provided are accurate. And then a fix agent, which proposes what is the fix, and PII and plagiarism agent as well. So which makes sure like there are no like duplicate content, and we are not copying content from anywhere else. And then all of these, like you see the supervisor agent. So this will be the parent agent, which orchestrates all of these together. Okay. And moving to the Marketplace app. Yeah, here I've used the starter kit from Sitecore, like which follows the regular template. Here you can see the layout, like which includes those title, description for the app, and then the page, which is the main element. Like you'll be seeing this shortly. So it includes all of these sections, and then I've followed the Chakra UI theme, and then I've added a couple of components which is getting used in the page there. And I've created some, like this is an out-of-the-box util that I created, like which is the Marketplace client, with which like we can do which includes the inbuilt authorization and those ones. And yeah, some config. So that's the code. And I've launched both of these, which is the localhost 3000, which is the Marketplace app, and this is the Agentic app, which is runs at the localhost 3001. And this is the page where we are going to see this now. So since I've enabled this in the page context panel, it's available here. So when I click on this, here it, give me a second, the session has expired, let me reload it. And here you see the spinning logo for localhost 3000, which is primarily because there is no context here. It's not embedded within a specific Sitecore AI application. So that's why you see that here. But then here, this localhost 3000 will start to work. So I've included the page info. So this is the context. So all of this runs within an iframe. But then since we use the starter kit, inbuilt authorization, and all of these, it automatically picks up the page name. I'm just displaying this with the Chakra UI, but then all of these are available with a quick API call. And right now, all of these are running behind the scenes in parallel. There are multiple AI calls that are being made for each of these. And it usually takes about like 30 seconds or 45 seconds. Yeah, while this is happening, do you guys have any specific questions?
Yeah, I probably have a quick one.
Sure.
Yeah, just around the Agentic Marketplace app, how you're communicating with it from the Next.js app, obviously knowing that the Agentic app is self-hosted and mostly Python.
Yeah, that's right. So it's only like I'm calling the API like localhost 3000. These two are created as like composable apps, like two separate applications. And one of the benefit is these AI applications will require more power than the other one. So it's easy for you to like scale or scale down or scale up. And whatever you see here, like this is something like a lot of things that we see in the code, like that get reused across other use cases as well. So building an agentic app like which works for multiple applications, like sometimes like you may want to extend this beyond Sitecore with your external services as well. So sometimes like you'll get that flexibility if you are splitting this up into two. The other way to do is creating a full stack app. But then there is one challenge like with full stack again, it's a Python code, like you may have that challenge. So the best way is to like kind of split this separately, host this separately, and just have the API based connection.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So the Python app is it a REST API?
It's a REST API.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. So yeah, it has completed now, and we have the things. Like I have an Excel sheet like which shows like it shouldn't be like there are some regulations which I mentioned in the Excel sheet. So that's what it's following, and it's saying like it is not meeting those ones. And for facts, it is saying that so it is went ahead and evaluated the specific detail that we have mentioned here. So I'm using a specific model here, which is connected with web search. It's available within GPT. I think it's like GPT web search preview. That's the model that I'm using. So that model automatically goes and does the search for us and finds out that the claim that we have made here is wrong. Like here we say like 90%, but then the actual is 32%. So we have to reframe our thinking. And then also the citation. So this specific agent looked at the citation URL that we mentioned here, and it is not finding that exact thing which we have called out here. And then the PII. So here we have said like email John Doe at soltera.com. So it is recommending us to change it to like something at company at marketing.com. So that's what it does. And then now it comes with some recommended fixes as well. Here you can see. So it's asking us to change the specific title to something different, which is primarily because here we use the word family, which is a little bit biased. So it is trying to come up with something which works for all. And a subtitle like based on the things that we discussed earlier, and certain metadata keywords as well. So yeah, when I click on apply fixes, so here you can see this is our human in the loop. I haven't made it editable, but ideally it has to be like an editable thing. So we can also like edit it once it is applied as well. So I clicked on apply fixes and it says it's applied and reload. The reason is like since this is happening within an iframe, we cannot reload the complete parent page because we don't have access. So we have to manually refresh it to see these changes here. Then if we wanted any further edits, we could edit and publish. Yeah. Yeah, that's it for the demo. Yeah, so apart from this, I wanted to share these list of resources. So this is a GitHub repository that you see here. And we have the marketplace starter kit. Like this is a really good thin starter kit, like without like too much of complications. Like you could really get started quickly with this. And overall, it didn't took a lot of time for me. Like it took, I would say about like maybe 40-50 hours in total. So it was like the starter kit was good, and I also used Cursor and did some vibe coding as well. So it reduced all of my efforts. And then the marketplace documentation that you could see here. So this is also a good documentation which covers all of these details which we discussed in a very lengthy format.
Yeah, I had one more quick question. In regards to, I guess, like the the events that you've seen so far with some of your experience on the marketplace apps, like refresh, have you spoken to anybody that works on the marketplace apps that might be aware of like any upcoming adjustments to being able to reload or have other types of hook or events that communicate between the iframe app
Yeah.
and the Pages app?
Yeah, I think I've heard in the symposium they mentioned they are working on a lot of different upgrades for the marketplace app. So definitely they are working on all of these, and it should be released soon. It is being actively looked upon by Sitecore. So maybe in the next month or two, like we should be getting a lot of details around those. Um, but for now, I'm not sure like if the newer version, like they have been like making a lot of updates. So this app I created I think about 4 weeks ago, but at the time it was not there. But I have to like still look at it in the last 1 or 2 weeks if they have released anything.